So we're going to take a little turn in our topic discussion now, and we're going to turn our focus on how to use information systems to create values in organizations. I have the proud honor of introducing my colleague, Dr. Charla Griffy-Brown. She is the former Denny Chair of the Graziadio Business School, a named professor position. She is a Harvard Fulbright Scholar, and she got her PhD from the University of Queensland. She's done a lot of research, especially in the United States and abroad, and her expertise is in Asian countries, specifically in Japan. She's done a lot of great consulting, and I've done a lot of great work with her, and I'm proud to share her with you this morning. Charla?
Thanks, Mark. I'm really excited to be here, and I am thankful for all the work that Mark has done to put this together. I've learned a lot in the sessions that I've been a part of today, and as I've been visiting places with Dr. Chun and sometimes on my own, one of the things that I've noticed is an incredible sense of urgency in the current economy and some anxiety that I haven't really felt since I experienced the Asian economic crisis. In 1997, I was working in Indonesia when that economy fell. And I haven't really experienced it since, and this may all sound familiar, around 1990, when in one country that you're very familiar with, but may not be thinking quite of this country, there was a financial implosion and a crisis in which the real estate bubble burst. The financial implosion was followed by a great deal of tumult politically, and they've been kind of flatlining as an economy for the last decade and a half. And if you've been paying close attention to what's been happening in Japan, you'll understand that a lot of features of their experience, while they don't certainly mirror what we're experiencing in magnitude, perhaps are in scope, there is a lot that we can learn from the companies that have survived and thrived. And for a long time, I've been working with small and medium-sized enterprises as well as large enterprises there and in other countries of Asia. And most recently, Mark and I have had the privilege of working with the public sector and looking at the strategic role of public sector CIOs and how this role is being transformed amidst the current economic situation. And if you may share some of these concerns, you may share some of this anxiety in your workplace, I don't know, where suddenly you find yourself, because of downsizing with fewer people, you're having to do more with less, you don't have the budget, and yet your customers are still as demanding, if not more so, because they're even more careful about what they want to purchase and how and when and where. And in the economy, there used to be all of the literature about customer delight. And now, all of a sudden, customer loyalty is everything. It's no longer about acquiring new customers necessarily, although that's certainly a very good thing. We want to increase our revenue. But really, what we want to do is we want to keep the customers that we have, right? So that means that we have to very carefully manage this customer loyalty phenomena. And also, we live in a world in which there are an increasing number of technology options, and they're very complex, and we're having to make decisions in an environment in which we sometimes have fewer resources to work with, and yet we have very, very demanding consumers because of market transparency through the internet. And in the previous conversation, we talked about the fact that that customers are able to communicate very rapidly through YouTube, through other social media. And therefore, how can we capture this in a way that can be effective? And I want to kind of be George Clooney here for a second and throw out my backpack and say, can I help you put some new tools inside of it this morning that hopefully will be of benefit to you? So what I've tried to do is collect some of the relevant information from companies and the public sector, surprising the public sector, right, that may be useful as you navigate these turbulent waters. How many of you have had an absolutely fantastic experience at the Department of Motor Vehicles? Where you thought you were at the Ritz-Carlton, right? Nobody? What a surprise. Why is that? It doesn't have to be that way, right? And in fact, you'll be surprised to know that the Department of Motor Vehicles in Manhattan has been so transformed in this one part of the city that I almost wanted to move there, lose my license, and go in and get a new one because it's such a good experience. I'm not lying to you. It's really, really changed. And how many of you just love it when you get correspondence from the IRS? Does that make you feel good? If you get a check. Some of us do get checks and some of us don't. Well, I have to say, I had a conversation with the CIO of the IRS, and he's from New York. And he said, even I shudder when I get a letter from the IRS. He's the CIO. So our question has been, how can we make a difference? Here you have, certainly in the public sector, constrained resources, but there are tremendous opportunities, and how can we leverage technology to transform the customer experience? So let's talk about this for a second. And in all of our companies, we have all of these different channels, right? All these different ways for people to find out about us, to reach us, to contact us. Then a big part of the problem is confusion. Where do I start, and who do I call? Okay? So we have to start there. And the first example I want to give you is from a couple of companies I did some work with, Alaska Airlines and Hilton Hotels, at different points in their history when they were looking at customer-facing technology. And if you think carefully about self-check-in, which we now almost take for granted, right? You can go anywhere and check in. Well, this whole idea of self-service started somewhere, and it actually started in the 19th century with grocery stores, and then moved into the 20th century with gasoline and with fast food. And at that time, the equation is really it's cheaper and it's quicker, right? But then we moved into ATMs, and then we moved into self-check-in. We moved into the internet, where you actually don't even have, you just print it out and you take it. Now you can have boarding pass on your phone. And somewhere along the line, the value equation has changed from cheaper and poorer quality to, wow, this transaction takes me less time, which is valuable, which actually is a higher quality for me. So these companies were able to capture this, and they were able to understand, and this is kind of lesson number one, that by building out their existing data structures, Hilton Hotels had a property management system, and based on their property management system, they were able to build out a structure that gave their customers control, which is very important. It helped them in terms of a very valuable commodity, time, and it gave them options. And by doing this, it helped them navigate some of the turbulent waters they were feeling in terms of competition. And it also, on the upside, while it certainly had a cost, there were other areas that balanced that out. So I wanted to bring before you the fact that you can find new value by building out existing structures and by bringing what is valuable to the customers. And what is valuable to them is time, control, and options. And some of this can be delivered if we're very, very careful about how we manage our customer-facing technology, okay? So case number two, and as I mentioned, right now, loyalty is king, emperor, you name it. It's about customer loyalty. And some of this draws from the previous example. If you have a bad experience with a cell phone, say you buy a cell phone from, I don't know, AT&T, and it doesn't work. So you take it back, and what do? Get a new phone, right? Probably the same one, right? If you go to a restaurant and you have a bad experience, are you going to go back? No. So customer loyalty and the ability to keep customers is different when you're looking at the customer service side, the customer service mechanism. So what are some of the things that we have to consider in order to maximize or optimize our equation there? The first is rapid problem resolution. And this is true among small and medium-sized enterprises to large enterprises. If you can fix a customer's problem quickly, remember, time is valuable, but if you can fix a customer's problem quickly and seamlessly, Hilton found out in their metrics that, that if they can do this, they actually enhance customer loyalty, that customers are more loyal if you make a mistake and actually fix it above and beyond their expectation than if there was no mistake that was made to begin with. So rapid problem resolution, and this can be an information-driven resource, right? If you have a view of the customer, if you have a unified view of the customer, if you're able to fix the problem quickly because of, say, unified communications, something as simple as that can actually save you so much time in fixing that problem that it can make a big difference in terms of customer loyalty. Another thing that I'm seeing more recently in the banking sector is proactively anticipating and intercepting problems. And this is interesting because in the customer delight literature, it's all about compassion and being the Ritz-Carlton, so you anticipate that two people are walking in with brand new rings, so they must be a married couple, and you'll get them 2 wines of glass. It's a little different. This type of problem is the fact that you have people out there tweeting and blogging who may have a problem with your company that may be growing into a larger problem or could be picked up by an organization that could come knocking on your door. Let me give you an example. And this is a public example, so I'll talk about it. A few years ago, Electronic Arts had a contract situation with their programmers in which they were doing a lot of overtime. And one of the wives of one of the programmers was blogging about the health problems that her husband was having. This happened to be picked up by the LA Times, which then, of course, was brought to the attention of the government, which then came knocking on the door to find out what exactly was happening in terms of their labor practices. So small problems can not only escalate into large problems, but if you anticipate problems, then you can actually go back to this rapid problem resolution and create customer loyalty. There are some banks, believe it or not, who are so proactive, they've created an entire segment of their workforce that scans the internet looking for, say, whatever the bank's name is to see if people are talking about a problem they had, and then they contact that person. A little bit creepy, but but the idea is get a call out of the blue. A little bit creepy, but the creep factor aside, they've got the right idea. If we can scan and see if there is a problem and actually try to intercede and help solve the problem, we can increase our customer loyalty. Okay? Another thing I think is important to understand, getting back to the very first slide, where do we start, is that in the context of an information ocean, if you can help people swim, you are creating value for them, okay? So people value finding you, that's obviously search. They also value being found. And the point that I want to make here is that we are absolutely flooded with information, and now we're trying to find the right channels to dial in to our customers. And believe it or not, they're just as confused as you are as to which channels would be the best way to go in. Any way you can simplify that process is going to give you inroads. And obviously, having multiple channels that come back to a single point of contact is going to be a good strategy. So one thing that a lot of organizations are doing is they're trying to leverage social media and search, and understanding the difference between search engine optimization and search engine management versus what you're doing through Facebook, really, and how you're trying to help people find you who may be interested in your product, okay? Providing some kind of a single point of reference so that when they do find you, they know exactly where to go, that it's not confusing. Where do I need to go? And I want to make this plug because of the experience we've recently had with the public sector. One of the great learnings from the Department of Motor Vehicles was enabling clean transactions, okay? We all know a lot about our business processes, hopefully, and we probably know a lot about our vertical business processes, but we have difficulty cutting across the horizontal. And if we can cut across some of those horizontal business processes, leveraging these technologies, then what you're able to do is create a cleaner transaction for your customers. And once you get there, we can tie these things together, even in terms of going back and solving a problem. It's cutting across the horizontals that can make a really big difference. And this is just to show you that in terms of social media, we're not the only ones out there, and there are plenty of opportunities to leverage this in a variety of pathways in order to help customers out, help them swim through that ocean of information. And I also wanted to point out that this doesn't simply have to be in marketing, sales, and customer support, that you can actually leverage these technologies behind the line of visibility, or off stage, as some of our experience economy people like to refer to it, so that you are actually creating value simply through your back-end systems, which goes back to the first slides. By building out your back-end systems and innovating there, you can create value in different ways on the front end where you actually do touch your customer. And I guess this is a point I want to make, and I hope I can make it clearly. We all know the difference between stalking and wooing, right? Most of you laughed or cringed when I said, intercepting a customer and talking about their problem. I wanted to bring this up because I've actually had this experience on several occasions lately where companies will come knocking at your door at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It's a little too much on the stalking side of things than a wooing. Then here's our product, and I see you've bought these things, so you might like these things approach. And the way that we can make sure that we're clear on which side we stand is through very careful analytics and through very careful segmentation, do our marketing homework, and also creating this unified view of the customer so that we're very, very clear when we might be crossing some boundaries. My husband, who's from Australia, used to feel this way all the time about our telecommunications companies. He would switch from one to the other, and he'd say, it's worse than breaking up with an old girlfriend. They're always calling me back and asking me, can I come over? I was like, no, AT&T's already here. He had trouble with that. I think the bottom line in order to achieve this goal is to make sure that our strategy is aligned with our organizational structure. Step number one, make sure you have a customer strategy, and that involves segmentation. We can't build out any technical solutions until we have that. Step number two, make sure that you have aligned your organizational structure with the incentives, et cetera, to achieve those strategic goals. Then you can really start putting in the technology. So here's some tools for coping. What I did is I just put together some questions that I think it would be helpful for you to ask yourself as you go through the exercise of trying to figure out how this might work for you in your company. Okay? And in the first instance, I think you have to understand how your customer defines value. What frameworks and metrics apply? How can we anticipate what the customer's needs are and establish priorities? And then how can we empower their choices and their options through these customer-facing technologies? And I put these crocodiles here. You may be wondering, the method to my madness. None of my pictures may make any sense. I apologize for that. It's kind of late when I pull these things up. But one of the CIOs I was talking to had this wonderful metaphor. He said, sometimes I'm so busy, or usually I'm so busy killing the crocodiles, I can't think about getting out of the swamp. And I think that's an image that we need to hold in our minds, because we need to put together a strategic direction so that we can get out of the swamp in addition to killing the crocodiles. So solving the rapid problem resolution in addition to our long-term vision. And that's the silos versus the horizontal business processes. Questions I think we need to ask there: how do we integrate the horizontal and the vertical? What are the benefits of our current constraints? In other words, we may have limited budgets, we may have limited resources, but perhaps there's data that we're having to consolidate because of that. Maybe there's something that we can build out from that would enable our customers to do things they haven't done in the past. Other tools I think are important are the business analysis. Do we have an enterprise view? Should we rethink talent? That's come up several times today. And how do we put talent in strategic places? Are we hiring, particularly in IT, technicians or business analysts? and how can we put those together? Data usage versus data collection. We have to think about compliance. We also have to think about cost. How do we communicate that? Are there trade-offs that we're not calculating and that we need to communicate? And this gets down to our resource constraints and how we're moving into other areas. How is the data going to be used? And I can't emphasize enough data definition, because then you can get competing sources of truth. If you're not really clear about data definitions, even if you have a single collection, if you just put it out there, you can have problems. So I think we really have to think a lot more carefully about our data. And I put here an agility check. Does our firm have the resources to pursue opportunities? If not, that may not be such a bad thing. We just need to make very specific and wise choices, right? And does our firm have the processes to then facilitate any strategic changes we might be looking at? So here's just a few final takeaways. Value comes in many flavors. I mentioned rapid problem resolution, customer-facing systems that can help your customers see the trade-offs and have control, and that time is valuable, okay? Takeaway number 2, unified view is going to help you achieve success. If you can have a unified view of the customer, that is going to help you achieve success in any of the build-outs you have in terms of customer-facing technology. It's particularly going to help you create customer loyalty. I mentioned social media for anticipating problems, simplification of points of contact, clean transaction, having the CIO be a strategic leader rather than just someone who does operations. And always remember that time is valuable to people. So if you can save them time, you're going to create loyalty. Build bridges, and this is where I'm talking about the horizontal. So ask yourself, how can we leverage our current constraints? How can we create partnerships? And how can we help each other achieve success?
So creating value, you've done a lot of work in Asia. And creating value in international aspects is a lot different than it is here in the United States. Here in this room, we've got a lot of companies that are multinational.
Mm-hmm.
And when we attempt to use things like social networking or technologies to harness information up and down the supply chain, other companies in other nations might do it a lot more different, might capture information a lot different, might use technology a lot different. For example, in Japan, the Japanese are very quick to read a lot of blogs, but they're a little shy to contribute to the blogs and share their opinions. What would be a recommendation for using the social networking to create value in an international perspective?
That's a very good question, and the answer will differ from country to country significantly, because digital ethnography, which is kind of the study of how people live and work in the digital world, definitely shows that there are distinct differences if you go to Japan than, say, here. For example, in Japan, there are a lot of social media, which are very pervasive and people communicate, but they're constructed differently, and they're less likely to reveal their true selves in this context. So, so using this to capture the same kind of anticipated need would be very, very different. You would need someone who had a lot of local knowledge. Doesn't mean that it's impossible, because people everywhere in the world, believe it or not, complain. And they will complain loudly in this media, whether they know you or not. So in Japan, one mechanism for achieving the same result may not be matching this person with this complaint, but figuring out that there's a trend of complaints in this area through a number of anonymous sources, and then dealing with that in a public way.
And I've got a follow-up question on that. So in your presentation, you said understand how your customer defines value, not how your company defines value.
Right.
In my perspective, how your company defines value could be 100 different ways. And
True.
it might not match the core competency of your organization. There's a mismatch, and you may not be able to deliver the value or change the processes to meet that value of your customer or customers. What's your suggestion of moving forward then?
There's a great book that's out by Ulrike Schade called Choose and Focus. And one of the things that it shows of the Japanese companies that were successful and that have not only survived but thrived during their flatline is that these were companies who made very strategic choices to focus. And so sometimes this may mean that we can't deliver what we need to deliver to a segment that we have deemed in our strategy to be important. Then perhaps we need to look to segments that we can and eliminate that one. I think one of the things with a customer strategy is you look carefully at those that are profitable, those that are not profitable, and what it's going to take you to achieve value for all of those. And some you may just have to eliminate as this is not going to be our focus.
But should profits be your focus?
Absolutely. So profits being your focus, you have to choose which customers are going to be profitable and which should you aim for. That's part of a customer strategy.
Any other questions? Technology areas have taken a hard hit.
Right.
From a lot of industries. What would you suggest is the top initiatives that an organization should look at to bring about a better economic condition?
Well, I think a lot of companies are looking very hard and fast about what they can maintain in-house. So a lot of companies are looking at ways that they can have solutions hosted or that they can get the same value from solutions which are external for functions that are non-core. So particularly for small and medium-sized companies, I would suggest strongly look at those types of solutions because that's one way that you can, that at least you can put costs in another area. You can manage costs differently.